Hello. Hello, Hime. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, Hime. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Royal Book Club. How's everybody doing on this fine, fine day? Comfy maxing, yep. It's comfy, isn't it? Peak comfy time. Make sure you've got your blankets, your snacks, your hot cup of tea. The mood for a wholesome Christian stream. Yes, Bible study. Because I am a good, wholesome Christian child. Yes. Pissed on the bed again. Thank you for letting me know. Good for you? Question mark? We need Bible study after that last stream. It's literally that fucking sowing and reaping meme. me sowing. Yeah! Fuck yeah! Yeah! Me reaping. What the fuck? Yeah, what last stream? I've no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Is the audio okay? The BGM? You like this piano track? I like this a lot. This song is very nice. No, Dizzy's boob. I got to see Dizzy's nipple, and I divulged with consent the exact hex code, just as I promised. All right, we good? Okay, nice. Today we are going to be reading a couple excerpts from The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Oh god, why are there two of them? Two of them? What?
I love bugs and I thank you for your service.
Thank you for Akasupa. Oh my god, wow. The love bugs and I thank you for your service. You're welcome. I will always be one to share with the crowd. I'm not at all surprised Dizzy consented. Honestly, me neither. Like it didn't even take like any convincing. I was just like, can I post the hex code? It's just like, yeah. Yeah, thank you. I will rest easy knowing that I have served the love bugs well. Well, I was gonna do it to me someday now. Okay, first of all, I'm not gonna be taking a picture of my nipple and sending it to my coworkers in the first place. Y'all stay safe out there, though. I love communism sharing hex codes. Okay, back on topic. Why not I do that? My god. We are going to be reading a couple short stories from the anthology The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which is it's a couple of short stories written from the perspective of Watson. And they are I think originally they were published like in a magazine, like a monthly published in a magazine. So now we are going to be going through this. I don't know how many of these stories we can go. I think there's like 10 or 12 of them. But I am going to read a couple of them from start to... Okay, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11... Yeah, we have 12. Thank you for gifted! Thank you for gift membership! Oh, Himebito! Oh my god, the double! Himebito! Wait, I'm gonna turn off the Himebito for now. And I think they're still... Are they still written by code? Yeah, this is, like, you know, back in ye olden days. let me monitor only. Okay, all right. So we are going to start with the first story, A Scandal in Bohemia. Let me indicate that. A Scandal in Bohemia. And for this book, I actually don't have the physical version. So I'm gonna be reading from a PDF. Sorry, immersion broken, I know. But I will read the PDF and I will have this book open and I will turn the pages so it feels like you're still like, you know. Can I put the PDF on screen? No, but I can tell you where to find it. If you search up The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes PDF, there's a link to a PDF with the URL sherlock-holmes.es, which is the Sherlock Holmes anthology collection, I believe, and you can find it there and read it yourself. Okay, let me get a real book. Right. Here. Do you hear this crisp this crisp paper noise? This is my Oscar Wilde book. That I'm just gonna use this in place. Yeah, book ASMR, so true. Right. So, are you ready to start? Are we ready to start? Yippee! And just a note that while I am reading, I will be focusing on this story. I'll take a break every chapter or so to like talk to you guys, but during the reading, I will be focused on the I will be focused on the book and I won't be reading comments or reacting to comments in super chats. So, let's lock in, okay? A Scandal in Bohemia. Chapter 1. To Sherlock Holmes, she is always the woman. I have seldom heard him mention her under any other name. In his eyes, she eclipses and predominates the whole of her sex. It is not that he felt any emotion akin to love for Irene Adler. All emotions, and that one particularly, were abhorrent to his cold, precise, but admirably balanced mind. He was, I take it, the most perfect reasoning and observing machine that the world has seen, but as a lover, he would have placed himself in a false position. He never spoke of the softer passions, save with a gibe and a sneer. They were admirable things for the observer, excellent for drawing the veil from men's motives and actions. But for the trained reasoner to admit such intrusions into his own delicate and finely adjusted temperament was to introduce a distracting factor which might throw doubts upon all his mental results. Grit in a sensitive instrument, or a crack in one of his own high-power lenses, would not be more disturbing than a strong emotion in a nature such as his. And yet, there was but one woman to him, and that woman was the late Irene Adler, of dubious and questionable memory. I had seen little of Holmes lately. My marriage had drifted us away from each other. My own complete happiness and the home-centered interests which rise up around a man who first finds himself master of his own establishments were sufficient to absorb all of my attention, while Holmes, who loathed every form of society with his whole bohemian soul, remained in our lodgings in Baker Street, buried among his old books, and alternating from week to week between cocaine and ambition, the drowsiness of the drug, and the fierce energy of his own keen nature. He was still, as ever, deeply attracted by the study of crime, and occupied his immense faculties and extraordinary powers of observation in following out those clues, and clearing up those mysteries which had been abandoned as hopeless by the official police. From time to time, I heard some vague accounts of his doings, of his summons to Odessa in the case of the Treptow murder, of his clearing up the singular tragedy of the Atkinson brothers at Trincomalee, and finally of the mission which he accomplished so delicately and successfully for the reigning family of Holland. Beyond the signs of his activity, however, which I merely shared with all the readers of the daily press, I knew little of my former friend and companion. One night, it was on the 20th of March, 1888, I was returning from a journey to a patient, for I had now returned to civil practice, when my way led me through Baker Street. As I passed the well-remembered door, which must always be associated in my mind with my wooing, and with the dark incidents of the study in scarlet, I was seized with a keen desire to see Holmes again, and to know how he was employing his extraordinary powers. His rooms were brilliantly lit, and even as I looked up, I saw his tall, spare figure pass twice in the dark silhouette against the blind. He was pacing the room swiftly, eagerly, with his head sunk upon his chest and his hands clasped behind him. To me, who knew his every mood and habit, his attitude and manner told their own story. He was at work again. He had risen out of his drug-created dreams and was hot upon the scent of some new problem. I rang the bell and was shown up to the chamber which had formerly been, in part, my own. His manner was not effusive. It seldom was, but he was glad, I think, to see me. With hardly a word spoken, but with a kindly eye, he waved me to an armchair, threw across his case of cigars, and indicated a spirit case and a gasolgene in the corner. Then he stood before the fire and looked me over in his singular, introspective fashion. "Wedlock suits you," he remarked. "I think, Watson, that you have put on 7.5 pounds since I saw you." "7," I answered. "Indeed, I should have thought a little more. Just a trifle more, I fancy, Watson. And in practice again, I observe. You did not tell me that you intended to go into harness." "Then how did you know?" "I see it, I deduce it. How do I know that you have been getting yourself very wet lately, and that you have most a clumsy and careless servant girl?" "My dear Holmes," said I, "this is too much. You would have certainly been burned had you lived a few centuries ago. It is true that I had a country walk on Thursday and came home in a dreadful mess, but as I have changed my clothes, I can't imagine how you deduce it. As to Mary Jane, she is incorrigible, and my wife has given her notice, but there again I fail to see how you work it out." He chuckled to himself and rubbed his long, nervous hands together. "It is simplicity itself," said he. "My eyes tell me that on the inside of your left shoe, just where the firelight strikes it, the leather is scored by 6 almost parallel cuts. Obviously, they have been caused by someone who has very carelessly scraped around the edges of the sole in order to remove crusted mud from it. Hence you see my double deduction that you had been out in vile weather, and you had a particularly malignant boot-slitting specimen of the London slavey. As to your practice, if a gentleman walks into my room smelling of iodoform, with a black mark of nitrate of silver upon his right forefinger, and a bulge on the right side of his top hat to show where he has secreted his stethoscope, I must be dull indeed if I do not pronounce him to be an active member of the medical profession." I could not help laughing at the ease with which he explained his process of deduction. "When I hear you give your reasons," I remarked, "the thing always appears to me to be so ridiculously simple that I could easily do it myself, though at each successive instance of your reasoning I am baffled until you explain your process. And yet I believe that my eyes are as good as yours." "Quite so," he answered, lighting a cigarette and throwing himself down in an armchair. "You see, but you do not observe. The distinction is clear. For example, you have frequently seen the steps which lead up from the hall to this room." "Frequently." "How often?" "Well, some hundreds of times." "Then how many are there?" "How many? I don't know." "Quite so. You have not observed, and yet you have seen. That is just my point. Now, I know that there are 17 steps because I have both seen and observed. Or maybe you're just autistic." "By the way, since you are interested in these little problems, and since you are good enough to chronicle 1 or 2 of my trifling experiences, you may be interested in this." He threw over a sheet of thick, pink-tinted notepaper which had been lying open upon the table. "It came by the last post," said he. "Read it aloud." The note was undated and without either signature or address. "There will call upon you tonight at 7:45, it said. a gentleman who desires to consult you upon a matter of the very deepest moment. Your recent services to one of the royal houses of Europe have shown that you are one who may be safely trusted with matters which are of an importance which can hardly be exaggerated. This account of you we have from all quarters received. Be in your chamber then at that hour, and do not take it amiss if your visitor wear a mask. This is indeed a mystery, I remarked. What do you imagine that it means? I have no data yet. It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories, instead of theories to suit facts. But the note itself, what do you deduce from it? I carefully examined the writing and the paper upon which it was written. The man who wrote it was presumably well-to-do, I remarked, endeavoring to imitate my companion's processes. Such paper cannot be bought under half a crown a packet. It is peculiarly strong and stiff. Peculiar, that is the very word, said Holmes. It is not an English paper at all. Hold it up to the light. I did so and saw a large E with a small g, a P and a large G with a small t woven into the texture of the paper. What do you make of that? Asked Holmes. The name of the maker, no doubt, or his monogram rather. Not at all. The G with the small t stands for Gesellschaft, which is the German for company. It is a customary contraction like our co. P, of course, stands for papier. Now for the EG. Let us glance at our Continental Gazetteer. He took down a heavy brown volume from the shelf. 𝐒𝐤 Here we are. Egria. It is in a German-speaking country, in Bohemia, not far from Carlsbad. Remarkable as being the scene of the death of Wallenstein, and for its numerous glass factories and paper mills. Haha, my boy. What do you make of that? What the fuck? His eyes sparkled, and he sent up a great blue, triumphant cloud from his cigarette. The paper was made in Bohemia, I said. Precisely, and the man who wrote the note is a German. Do you know the peculiar construction of the sentence? This account of you we have from all quarters received. A Frenchman or a Russian could not have written that. It is the German who is so uncautious to his verbs. It only remains, therefore, to discover what is wanted by this German who writes upon Bohemian paper and prefers wearing a mask to showing his face. And here he comes, if I am not mistaken, to resolve all of our doubts. As he spoke, there was a sharp sound of horses' hoofs and grating wheels against the curb, followed by a sharp pull at the bell. Holmes whistled. A pair, by a sound. Yes, he continued, glancing out the window. A nice little brougham and a pair of beauties. 150 guineas apiece. There's money in this case, Watson, if there is nothing else. I think that I had better go, Holmes. Not a bit, Doctor. Stay where you are. I am lost without my Boswell. This promises to be interesting. It would be a pity to miss it. But your client? Never mind him. I may want your help, and so may he. Here he comes. Sit down in the armchair, Doctor, and give us your best attention. A slow and heavy step, which had been heard upon the stairs in the passage, paused immediately outside the door. Then there was a loud and authoritative tap. Come in, said Holmes. A man entered who could hardly have been less than 6 feet 6 inches in height, with the chest and limbs of a Hercules. His dress was rich with a richness which would, in England, be looked upon as akin to bad taste. Heavy bands of astrakhan were slashed across the sleeves and fronts of his double-breasted coat, while the deep blue cloak which was thrown over his shoulders was lined with flame-colored silk and secured at the neck with a brooch which consisted of a single flaming beryl. Boots which extended halfway up his calves and which were trimmed at the tops with rich brown fur completed the impression of barbaric opulence which was suggested by his whole appearance. He carried a broad-brimmed hat in his hand, which he wore across the upper part of his face, extending down the cheekbones, a black visored mask, which he had apparently adjusted that very moment, for his hand was still raised to it as he entered. From the lower part of the face, he appeared to be a man of strong character, with a thick, hanging lip and a long, straight chin, suggestive of resolution pushed to the length of obstinacy. "You had my note?" he asked with a deep, harsh voice and a strongly marked German accent. "I told you that I would call." He looked from one to the other of us, as if uncertain which to address. "Pray take a seat," said Holmes. "This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson, who is occasionally good enough to help me in my cases. Whom have I the honor to address?" "You may address me as the Count von Gram of Bohemian noblemen. I understand that this gentleman, your friend, is a man of honor and discretion, whom I may trust with a matter of the most extreme importance. If not, I should much prefer to communicate with you alone." I rose to go, but Holmes caught me by the wrist and pushed me back into my chair. "It is both or none," said he. "You may say to this gentleman anything which you may say before me." The Count shrugged his broad shoulders. "Then I must begin," said he, "by binding you both to absolute secrecy for 2 years. At that end of the time, the matter will be of no importance. At present, it is not too much to say that is it of such weight it may have an influence upon European history." "I promise," said Holmes. "And I." "You will excuse this mask," continued our strange visitor. "The august person who employs me wishes his agent to be unknown to you, and I may confess at once that the title which I have just called myself is not exactly my own." "I was aware of it," said Holmes dryly. "The circumstances are of great delicacy, and every precaution has to be taken to quench what might grow to be an immense scandal and seriously compromise one of the reigning families of Europe. To speak plainly, the matter implicates the great house of Ormstein, hereditary kings of Bohemia." "I was also aware of that," murmured Holmes, settling himself down in his armchair and closing his eyes. Our visitor glanced with some apparent surprise at the languid, lounging figure of the man who had been no doubt depicted to him as the most incisive reasoner and most energetic agent in Europe. Holmes slowly reopened his eyes and looked impatiently at his gigantic client. "If your Majesty would condescend to state your case," he remarked, "I should be better able to advise you." The man sprang up from his chair and paced up and down the room in uncontrollable agitation. Then, with a gesture of desperation, he tore the mask from his face and hurled it upon the ground. "You were right!" I cried. "I am the king! Why should I attempt to conceal it?" "Why indeed?" murmured Holmes. "Your Majesty had not spoken before I was aware that I was addressing Wilhelm Gottreich Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Kassel-Felstein and hereditary king of Bohemia." "But you can understand," said our strange visitor, sitting down once more and passing his hand over his high white forehead. "You can understand that I am not accustomed to doing such business in my own person. Yet the matter was so delicate that I could not confide it to an agent without putting myself in his power. I have come incognito from Prague for the purpose of consulting you." "Then pray consult," said Holmes, shutting his eyes once more. "The facts are briefly this. Some 5 years ago, during a lengthy visit to Warsaw, I made the acquaintance of the well-known adventuress, Irene Adler. The name is no doubt familiar to you." "Kindly look her up in my index, Doctor," murmured Holmes without opening his eyes. For so many years, he had adopted a system of docketing all paragraphs concerning men and things, so that it was difficult to name a subject or a person on which he could not at once furnish information. In this case, I found her biography sandwiched between that of a Hebrew rabbi and that of a staff commander who had written a monograph upon the deep-sea fishes. "Let me see," said Holmes. Born in New Jersey in the year 1858. Contralto. La Scala. Prima donna Imperial Opera of Warsaw. Yes. Retired from operatic stage. living in London. Quite so. Your Majesty, as I understand, became entangled with this young person, wrote her some compromising letters, and is now desirous of getting those letters back. Precisely so. But how? Was there a secret marriage? None. No legal papers or certificates? None. Then I fail to follow, Your Majesty. If this young person should produce her letters for blackmailing or other purposes, how is she to prove their authenticity? There is the writing. Pooh-pooh. Forgery. My private notepaper. Stolen. My own seal. Imitated. My photograph. Bought. We were both in the photograph. Oh dear, that is very bad. Your Majesty has indeed committed an indiscretion. I was mad. Insane. You have compromised yourself seriously. I was only Crown Prince then. I was young. I am but 30 now. It must be recovered. We have tried and failed. Your Majesty must pay. It must be bought. She will not sell. Stolen then? 5 attempts have been made. Twice burglars in my pay ransacked her house. Once we diverted her luggage when she traveled. Twice she has been waylaid. There has been no result. No sign of it? Absolutely none. Holmes laughed. It is quite a pretty little problem, said he. But a very serious one to me, returned the king reproachfully. Very indeed. What does she propose to do with the photograph? To ruin me. But how? I am about to be married. So I have heard. To Clotilde Luthmann von Sachs-Meiningen, second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. You may know the strict principles of her family. She is herself the very soul of delicacy. A shadow of a doubt as to my conduct will bring the matter to an end. And Irene Adler threatens to send them the photograph, and she will do it. I know that she will do it. You do not know her, but she has a soul of steel. She has the face of the most beautiful of women and the mind of the most resolute of men. Rather than I should marry another woman, there are no lengths to which she would not go. None. You are sure that she has not sent it yet? I am sure. And why? Because she has said that she will send it on the day when the betrothal was publicly proclaimed. That will be next Monday. Guys, this German accent is starting to get hard. I am so bad at this. Oh, then we have 3 days yet, said Holmes with a yawn. That is very fortunate, as I have 1 or 2 matters of importance to look into just at present. Your Majesty will, of course, stay in London for the present? Certainly. You will find me at the Langham under the name of the Count von Gram. Then I shall drop you a line to let you know how we progress. Pray do so. I shall be all anxiety. Then, as to money, you have carte blanche. Absolutely. I tell you that I would give one of the provinces to my kingdom to have that photograph. And for present expenses? The king took a heavy chamois leather bag from under his cloak and laid it on the table. There are 300 pounds in gold and 700 in notes, he said. Holmes scribbled a receipt upon a sheet of his notebook and handed it to him. And Mademoiselle's address? He asked. Is Briony Lodge, Serpentine Avenue, St. John's Wood. Holmes took a note of it. One other question, said he. Was the photograph a cabinet? It was. Then good night, Your Majesty, and I trust that we shall soon have some good news for you. And good night, Watson, he added, as the wheels of the Royal Brougham rolled down the street. If you will be good enough to call tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I should like to chat this little matter over with you. And that is the end of Chapter 1 of A Scandal in Bohemia. Oh mein Gott, this is ein cave full of Bluntsbocken. Let me finish my Vita soy. That was Chapter 1. Yep, that was Chapter 1. I always love the descriptions of the different characters in home stories. Like it kind of feels like, you know, kind of like a one of those like med TV shows or like true crime, not true crime, sorry, those like cop TV shows where it's like each episode you get to meet new characters and there's a new story and a new mystery to solve. And like all of the characters have their own like peculiarities and stuff. I think that's one of my favorite parts. All the characters are so distinct and so interesting. Yeah, I can really see this big German man losing it over some. Yeah, I wonder what kind of photographs they were. Were they taking pictures of like, you know, scandalous things? Cause like cameras back in the day, they had to be mounted on tripods and like it would take a long time to take a picture, right? Did they like hire somebody to take a picture of them while they were, you know, holding hands? He was bent over showing. Oh, good God. Okay, but without further ado, are you guys ready to move on to the next chapter? Showing ankle. Hola, soy el señor de casa jaula de Ixcalún. Hola, señor, ¿qué tal? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? By God, I'd recognize that butthole mole anywhere. We're getting a divorce. Someone who unfortunately never got into reading. I'm enjoying this due to your voice. Yeah. I hope the story is captivating you too, not just my voice. I don't want to just put you to sleep. I want to get you interested in the story, you know? Okay. Let's move on, shall we? Chapter 2. At 3 o'clock precisely, I was at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady had informed me that he had left the house shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of awaiting him, however long he might be. I was already deeply interested in his inquiry, for it was surrounded by none of the grim and strange features which were associated with the 2 crimes which I have already recorded. Still, the nature of the case and the exalted station of his clients gave it a character of its own. Indeed, apart from the nature of the investigation which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of his situation and his keen, incisive reasoning which made it a pleasure to for me to study his system of work and to follow the quick, subtle methods by which he disentangled the most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was I to his invariable success that the very possibility of his failing had ceased to enter into my head. It was close upon 4 before the door opened, and a drunken-looking groom, ill-kempt and side-whiskered, with an inflamed face and disreputable clothes, walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to look 3 times before I was certain that it was indeed he. With a nod, he vanished into the bedroom, whence he emerged in 5 minutes, tweed suit and respectable, as of old. Putting his hands into his pockets, he stretched out his legs in front of the fire and laughed heartily for some minutes. "Well, really?" he cried, and then he choked and laughed again until he was obliged to lie back, limp and helpless, in the chair. "What is it?" "It's quite too funny. I am sure you can never guess how I employed my morning or what I ended up by doing." "I can't imagine. I suppose that you have been watching the habits and perhaps the house of Miss Irene Adler." "Quite so, but the sequel was rather unusual. I will tell you, however. I left the house a little after 8 o'clock this morning in the character of a groom out of work. There is a wonderful sympathy and Freemasonry among horsey men. Be one of them and you will know all that there is to know. I soon found Briony Lodge. It is a bijou villa with a garden at the back, but built out in front right up to the road, 2 stories. Chop lock to the door, large sitting room on the right side, well furnished, with long windows almost to the floor and those preposterous English window fasteners which a child could open. Behind there was nothing remarkable, save that the passage window could be reached from the top of the coach house. I walked around it and examined it closely from every point of view, but without noting anything else of interest. I then lounged down the street and found, as I expected, that there was a mews in the lane which runs down by one wall of the garden. I lent the ostlers a hand in rubbing down their horses and received in exchange 2p, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Adler, to say nothing of a dozen other people in the neighborhood in whom I was not in the least interested, but whose biographies I was compelled to listen to. "And what of Irene Adler?" I asked. "Oh, she has turned all the men's heads down in that part. She is the daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet. So say the Serpentine Muse to a man. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out at 5 every day, and returns at 7 sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times, except when she sings. Has only one male visitor, a good deal of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing. Never calls less than once a day, and often twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton of the Inner Temple. See the advantages of a cabman as a confidant." They had driven him home a dozen times from Serpentine Mews and knew all about him. When I had listened to all they had to tell, I began to walk up and down near Brinney Lodge once more and to think over my plan of campaign. This Godfrey Norton was evidently an important factor in the matter. He was a lawyer. That sounded ominous. What was the relation between them, and what's the object of his repeated visits? Was she his client, his friend, or his mistress? If the former, she had probably transferred the photograph to his keeping. If the latter, it was less likely. On the issue of this question depended whether I should continue my work at Brinney Lodge or turn my attention to the gentlemen's chambers in the temple. It was a delicate point, and it widened the field of my inquiry. I fear that I bore you with these details, but I have to let you see my little difficulties if you are to understand the situation. "I am following you closely," I answered. I was still balancing the matter in my mind when a hansom cab drove up to Brinney Lodge and a gentleman sprang out. He was a remarkably handsome man, dark, aquiline, and moustached, evidently the man of whom I'd heard. He appeared to be in a great hurry, shouted to the cabman to wait, and brushed past the maid who opened the door with the air of a man who was thoroughly at home. He was in the house about half an hour, and I could catch glimpses of him in the windows of the sitting room, pacing up and down, talking excitedly, and waving his arms. Of her, I could see nothing. Presently, he emerged, looking even more flurried than before. As he stepped up to the cab, he pulled out a gold watch from his pocket and looked at it earnestly. "Drive like the devil," he shouted. "First to Gross and Hankey's in Regent Street, and then to the Church of St. Monica in the Edgware Road. Half a guinea if you do it in 20 minutes. Away they went, and I was just wondering whether or not I should do well to follow them, when up to the lane came a neat little landau, and his tie under his ear, while all of the tags of his harness were sticking out of the buckles. It hadn't pulled up before she shot out of the hall door and into it. I only caught a glimpse of her at the moment, but she was a lovely woman, with a face that the man might die for. Also, hi Nakamama, hello. "The Church of St. Monica, John!" she cried, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes!" This was just quite too good to lose, Watson. I was just balancing whether I should run for it, or whether I should perch behind her landau, when a cab came through the street. The driver looked twice at such a shabby fare, but I jumped in before he could object. "The Church of St. Monica," said I, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. It was 25 minutes to 12, and of course it was clear enough what was in the wind. My cabby drove fast. I don't think I ever drove faster, but the others were there before us. The cab and the landau, with their steaming horses, were in front of the door when I arrived. I paid the man and hurried into the church. There was not a soul there, save the two whom I had followed and a surprised clergyman who seemed to be expostulating with them. They were all three standing in a knot in front of the altar. I lounged up the side aisle like any other idler who has dropped into a church. Suddenly, to my surprise, the three at the altar faced round to me, and Godfrey Norton came running as hard as he could towards me. Thank God, he cried. You do. Come, come. What then? I asked. Come, man, come. Only 3 minutes or it won't be legal. I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was, I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear and vouching for things of which I knew nothing, and generally assisting in the secure tying up of Irene Adler, spinster, to Godfrey Norton, bachelor. It was all done in an instant, and there was the gentleman thanking me on the one side and the lady on the other, while the clergyman beamed on me in front. It was the most preposterous position in which I ever found myself in my life, and it was the thought of it that started me laughing just now. It seems that there had been some informality about their license, that the clergyman absolutely refused to marry them without a witness of some sort, and that my lucky appearance saved the bridegroom from having to sally out into the streets in search of a best man. The bride gave me a sovereign, and I mean to wear it on my watch chain in memory of the occasion. This is a very unexpected turn of affairs, said I. And what then? Well, I found my plans very seriously menaced. It looked as if the pair might take an immediate departure, and so necessitate very prompt and energetic measures on my part. At the church door, however, they separated, he driving back to the temple and she to her own house. I shall drive out in the park at 5 as usual, she said as she left him. I heard no more. They drove away in different directions, and I went off to make my own arrangements. Which are? Some cold beef and a glass of beer, he answered, ringing the bell. I have been too busy to think of food, and I am likely to be busier still this evening. By the way, Doctor, I shall want your cooperation. I shall be delighted. You don't mind breaking the law? Not in the least. Nor running a chance of arrest? Not in a good cause. Oh, the cause is excellent. Then I am your man. Heh. I was sure that I might rely on you. But what is it you wish? When Mrs. Turner has brought in the tray, I will make it clear to you. Now, he said as he turned hungrily on the simple fare that our landlady had provided, I must discuss it while I eat, for I have not much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must be on the scene of action. Miss Irene, or Madam, rather, turns from her drive at 7. We must be at Briony Lodge to meet her. And what then? You must leave that to me. I have already arranged what is to occur. There is only one point on which I must insist. You must not interfere, come what may. You understand. I am to be neutral, to do nothing whatsoever. There will probably be some small unpleasantness. Do not join in it. It will end in my being conveyed into the house. 4 or 5 minutes afterwards, the sitting room window will open. You are to station yourself close to that open window. Yes. You are to watch me, for I will be visible to you. Yes. And when I raise my hand, so, you will throw into the room what I give you to throw, and will, at the same time, raise the cry of fire. You quite follow me? Entirely. It is nothing very formidable, he said, taking a long cigar-shaped roll from his pocket. It is an ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. Your task is confined to that. When you raise your cry of fire, it will be taken up by quite a number of people. You may then walk to the end of the street, and I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope that I have made myself clear. I am to remain neutral, to get near the window, to watch you, and at the signal to throw this object, then to raise a cry of fire, then to wait to you at the corner of the street. Precisely. Then you may entirely rely on me. That is excellent. I think perhaps it is almost time that I prepare for the new role I have to play. He disappeared into his bedroom and returned in a few minutes in the character of an amicable and simple-minded nonconformist clergyman. His broad black hat, his baggy trousers, his white tie, his sympathetic smile, and general look of peering and benevolent curiosity were such as Mr. John Hare alone could not have equaled. It was not merely that Holmes changed his costume. His expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with every fresh part that he assumed. The stage lost a fine actor, even as science lost an acute reasoner when he became a specialized in crime. It was 6:15 when we left Baker Street, and it still wanted 10 minutes to the hour when we found ourselves in Serpentine Avenue. It was already dusk, and the lamps were just being lighted as we paced up and down in front of Briony Lodge, waiting for the coming of its occupant. The house was such I had pictured it from Sherlock Holmes' succinct description, but the locality appeared to be less private than I expected. On the contrary, for a small street in a quiet neighborhood, it was remarkably animated. There was a group of shabbily dressed men smoking and laughing in the corner, a scissors grinder with his wheel, 2 guardsmen who were flirting with a nurse girl, and several well-dressed young men who were lounging up and down with cigars in their mouths. "You see," remarked Holmes, as we paced to and fro in front of the house, "this marriage rather simplifies matters. The photograph becomes a double-edged weapon now. The chances are that she would be as averse to its being seen by Mr. Godfrey Norton as our client is to its coming to the eyes of his princess. However, the question is, where are we to find the photograph?" Where indeed? "It is most unlikely that she carries it about with her. It is cabinet size, too large for easy concealment about a woman's dress. She knows that the king is capable of having her waylaid and searched. 2 attempts of the sort have already been made. We may take it then that she does not carry it about with her." Where then? Her banker or her lawyer? There is that double possibility. But I am inclined to think neither. Women are naturally secretive, and they like to do their own secreting. Why should she hand it over to anyone else? She could trust her own guardianship, but she could not tell what indirect or political influence might be brought to bear upon a businessman. Besides, remember that she had resolved to use it within a few days. It must be where she can lay her hands upon it. It must be in her own house. But it has twice been burgled. Psh, they don't know how to look. But how will you look? I will not look. What then? I will get her to show me. But she will refuse. She will not be able to. But I hear the rumble of wheels. It is her carriage. Now carry out my orders to the letter." As he spoke, the gleam of the sidelights of a carriage came round the curve of the avenue. It was a smart little landau which rattled up to the door of Briony Lodge. As it pulled up, one of the loafing men in the corner dashed forward to open the door in the hope of earning a copper, but was elbowed away by another loafer, who had rushed up with the same intention. A fierce quarrel broke out, which was increased by the 2 guardsmen, which took sides with one of the loungers, and by the scissors grinder, who was equally hot upon the other side. A blow was struck, and in an instant, the lady, who had stepped from her carriage, was the center of a little knot of flushed and struggling men, who struck savagely at each other with their fists and their sticks. Holmes dashed into the crowd to protect the lady, but just as he reached her, he gave a cry and dropped to the ground, with the blood running freely down his face. At his fall, the guardsmen took to their heels in one direction and the loungers in the other, while a number of better dressed people, who had watched the scuffle without taking part in it, crowded in to help the lady and to attend to the injured man. Irene Adler, as I will still call her, had hurried up the steps, but she stood at the top with her superb figure outlined against the lights of the hall, looking back into the street. "Is the poor gentleman much hurt?" she asked. "He is dead!" cried several voices. "No, no, there's life in him," shouted another. "But he'll be gone before you can get him to a hospital." "He's a brave fellow," said a woman. "They would have had the lady's purse and watch it if it hadn't been for him. They were a gang, and a rough one too. He's breathing now." "He can't lie in the street. May we bring him in, Mom?" "Surely. Bring him into the sitting room. There is a comfortable sofa. This way, please." Slowly and solemnly, he was borne into Briony Lodge and laid out in the principal room, while I still observed the proceedings from my post by the window. The lamps had been lit, but the blinds had not been drawn, so I could see Holmes as he lay upon the couch. I do not know whether he was seized with compunction at that moment for the part he was playing, but I know that I never felt more heartily ashamed of myself in my life when I saw the beautiful creature against whom I was conspiring, or the grace and kindliness with which she waited upon the injured man. And yet it would be the blackest treachery to Holmes to draw back now from the part which he had entrusted to me. I hardened my heart and took the smoke rocket from under my ulster. After all, I thought, we are not injuring her. We are but preventing her from injuring another. Holmes had sat up upon the couch, and I saw him motion like a man who is in need of air. The maid rushed open and threw open the window. At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the signal, I tossed my rocket into the room with a cry of "Fire!" The word was no sooner out of my mouth than the whole crowd of spectators, well-dressed and ill, gentlemen, ostlers, and servant maids, joined in a general shriek of "Fire!" Thick clouds of smoke curled in through the room and out at the open window. I caught a glimpse of rushing figures, and a moment later, the voice of Holmes from within, assuring them that it was a false alarm. Slipping through the shouting crowd, I made my way to the corner of the street, and in 10 minutes, I was rejoiced to find my friend's arm in mine, and to get away from the scene of uproar. He walked swiftly and in silence for some few minutes until we had turned down one of the quiet streets which lead towards the Edgware Road. "You did it very nicely, Doctor," he remarked. "Nothing could have been better. It is all right." "You have the photograph?" "I know where it is." "And how did you find out?" "She showed me, as I told you she would." "I am still in the dark." "I do not wish to make a mystery," said he, laughing. "The matter was perfectly simple. You, of course, saw that everyone in the streets was an accomplice. They were all engaged for the evening." "I guessed as much." "Then, when the row broke out, I had a little moist red paint in the palm of my hand. I rushed forward, fell down, clapped my hand to my face, and became a piteous spectacle. It is an old trick. That I could also fathom. Then they carried me in. She was bound to have me in. What else could she do? And into her sitting room, which was the very room which I suspected. It lay between that and her bedroom, and I was determined to see which. They laid me on a couch. I motioned for air. They were compelled to open the window, and you had your chance. But how did that help you? It was all important. When a woman thinks that her house is on fire, her instinct is at once to rush to the thing which she values most. It is a perfectly overpowering impulse, and I have more than once taken advantage of it. In the case of the Darlington substitution scandal, it was of use to me, and also in the Arnsworth Castle business. A married woman grabs at her baby, an unmarried one reaches for her jewel box. Now it was clear to me that Our Lady of today had nothing in the house more precious to her than what we are in quest of. She rushed to secure it. The alarm of fire was admirably done. Smoke and shouting were enough to shake nerves of steel. She responded beautifully. The photograph is in the recess behind a sliding panel just above the right belt pull. She was there in an instant, and I caught a glimpse of it as she half drew it out. When I cried out that it was a false alarm, she replaced it, glanced at the rocket, rushed from the room, and I have not seen her since. I rose and, making my excuses, escaped from the house. I hesitated whether to attempt to secure the photograph at once, but the coachman had come in. As he was watching me narrowly, it seemed safer to wait. A little over-precipitance may ruin all. "And now?" I asked. "Our quest is practically finished. I shall call with the king tomorrow, and with you, if you care to come with us. We will be shown into the sitting room to wait for the lady, but it is probable that when she comes she may find neither us nor the photograph. It might be a satisfaction to His Majesty to obtain it with his own hands." "And when will you call?" "At 8 in the morning. She will not be up, so that we have a clear field. Besides, we must be prompt, for this marriage may mean a complete change in her life and habits. I must wire to the king without delay." We had reached Baker Street and had stopped at the door. He was searching his pockets for the key when someone passing said, "Good night, Mr. Sherlock Holmes." There were several people on the pavement at the time, but the greeting happened to come from a slim youth in an ulster who had hurried by. "I've heard that voice before," said Holmes, staring down the dimly lit street. "Now I wonder who the deuce that could have been." And that is the end of chapter 2. Sorry, I'm making myself EP now. Gosh. Also, let me let's turn on my aircon again. Okay, I am back. Ugh. See, the annoying thing about my aircon is that, like, it shuts off every, like, hour or two. Is it okay to sleep? Of course. Get your rest if you need to. Have a lovely sleep. But yeah, like, my aircon, for some reason, turns off every couple hours, or, like, every hour or so. And you can't just turn it back on, like, on and off with the remote. You have to, like, reset the breaker. So I have to go on, flip the breaker, and, like, return. No, it's not automated. I think it's just broken. Cause like, we've had this house for a long time, and this aircon has been, like, living on its last legs. But it's also, like, such a hassle to get a new aircon, right? Because it's so expensive, and also, like, you have to get people to, like, route it from the outside and everything. Like, we bob the builder. It's every couple of years or so when it gives out. But, like, at that point, just get a new one, right? Yeah, it takes a while to install, and then, like, especially because the aircon is right above my streaming setup, I would have to move all my streaming stuff, and yeah. Okay, whatever. I mean, it's not the end of the world. But that was chapter 2. What do you guys think? Who do you think that slim youth in an Ulster was, who just greeted Sherlock Holmes? Do you think they'll be important to the story? Do you think that is where the photograph is hidden? Is everything as it seems? I think they'll kiss. What? The youth and Sherlock, or Watson and Sherlock, or Irene? The twinks are always important to the plot. Yes, they are pivotal, okay? You cannot overlook the twinks. Yeah, all of them. It's a big bohemian orgy. Have you ever cleaned a filter on the air conditioner? I think that's something that my grandpa does every once in a while. Maybe it's been a while, so I'll get him to take a look at it in a bit. Alright, chat. Yes, I'm drinking my soy milk. I'm drinking my Vita soy. Okay. Alright. Now we're moving on to chapter 3, where all shall be revealed, supposedly. Is this the real life? It says slime milk? No! Beetle milk? Slime milk? Beetle milk? Unitex, thank you! Everything okay, Dork? You seem to be bothered by something. I'm sorry, my demons are still... My demons are still clawing at me. The voices. Don't worry, I'm okay. And I hope you guys are enjoying... the... what do you call it? The story. Okay. Are you ready? Actually, wait, give me a second. I'm gonna get a hair tie. Would you look at who I have here? Hi, Somi. Everybody say hi, Somi. Oh my god, your chin is wet. Did you just drink water? You just have a sip of water? The real demon has arrived. Yeah. Yeah, let me wipe your face. silly little girl. She's a silly Billy. Tell her to bite us. Here, I'll lift her up to the mic. She bit the mic. I knew it. Knew you would bite it. Oh, you got a little eye booger. Crusty eyes. She's a baby. She's a baby. Thought that was me. No. In our kiss, yeah. Cats biting is like a sign of affection, right? Supposedly. Isn't it? Hmm? That was me biting her ear a little bit. Okay. Free. Do not disown me. I bite. Okay. Next. Are you ready for chapter 3? Chapter 3. I slept at Baker Street that night, and we were engaged upon our toast and coffee in the morning when the King of Bohemia rushed into the room. "You have really got it!" he cried, grasping Sherlock Holmes by either shoulder and looking eagerly in his face. "Not yet. But you have hopes?" "I have hopes." "Then come. I am all impatience to be gone." "We must have a cab." "No. My brougham is waiting." "Then that will simplify matters." We descended and started off once more for Briony Lodge. "Irene Adler is married," remarked Holmes. "Married? When?" "Yesterday." "But to whom?" "To an English lawyer named Norton." "But she could not love him." "I am in hopes that she does." "And why in hopes?" "Because it would spare your majesty all fear of future annoyance. If the lady loves her husband, she does not love your majesty. If she does not love your majesty, there is no reason why she should interfere with your majesty's plan." "Is it true?" It is true. And yet, well, I wish she had been of my own station. What a queen she would have made." He relapsed into a moody silence, which was not broken until we drew up in Serpentine Avenue. The door of Briony Lodge was open, and an elderly woman stood upon the steps. She watched us with a sardonic eye as we stepped from the brougham. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I believe," said she. "I am Mr. Holmes," answered my companion, looking at her with questioning and rather startled gaze. "Indeed. My mistress told me that you were likely to call. She left this morning with her husband by the 5:15 train from Charing Cross for the continent." "What?" Sherlock Holmes staggered back, white with chagrin and surprise. "Do you mean that she has left England?" "Never to return." "And the papers?" asked the king hoarsely. "All is lost." "We shall see." He pushed past the servant and rushed into the drawing room, followed by the king and myself. The furniture was scattered out in about every direction, with dismantled shelves and open drawers, as if the lady had hurriedly ransacked them before her flight. Holmes rushed at the bell pull, tore back a small sliding shutter, and plunging in his hand, pulled out a photograph and a letter. The photograph was of Irene Adler herself in an evening dress. The letter was superscribed to Sherlock Holmes, Esquire, to be left till called for. My friend tore it open, and we three all read it together. It was dated at midnight of the preceding night and ran in this way. "My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, you really did it very well. You took me in completely. Until after the alarm of fire, I had not a suspicion. But then, when I found out how I had betrayed myself, I began to think. I had been warned against you months ago. I had been told that if the king employed an agent, it would certainly be you, and your address had been given me. Yet, with all this, you made me reveal what you wanted to know. Even after I became suspicious, I found it hard to think evil of such a dear, kind old clergyman. But you know, I have been trained as an actress myself. Male costume is nothing new to me. I often take advantage of the freedom which it gives. I sent John, the coachman, to watch you, ran upstairs, got into my walking clothes, as I call them, and came down just as you departed. Well, I followed you to your door, and so made sure that I was really an object of interest to the celebrated Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Then I, rather imprudently, wished you good night and started for the temple to see my husband. We both thought the best resource was flight, when pursued by so formidable an antagonist, so you will find the nest empty when you call tomorrow. As to the photograph, your client may rest in peace. I love and am loved by a better man than he. The king may do what he will without hindrance from one whom he has cruelly wronged. I keep it only to safeguard myself and to preserve a weapon which will always secure me from any steps which he might take in the future. I leave a photograph which he might care to possess, and I remain, dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, very truly yours, Irene Norton, née Adler. What a woman! Oh, what a woman! Cried the King of Bohemia when we had all three read this epistle. Did I not tell you how quick and resolute she was? Would she have not made an admirable queen? Is she not a pity that she was not on my level? From what I have seen of the lady, she seems indeed to be on a very different level to your majesty, said Holmes coldly. I am sorry that I have not been able to bring your majesty's business to a more successful conclusion. On the contrary, my dear sir, cried the king, nothing could be more successful. I know that her word is inviolate. The photograph is now as safe as if it were in the fire. I am glad to hear your majesty say so. I am immensely indebted to you. Pray tell me in what way I can reward you. This ring! He slipped an emerald snake ring from his finger and held it upon the palm of his hand. Your majesty has something which I should value even more highly, said Holmes. You have what to name it. This photograph. The king stared at him in amazement. Irene's photograph, he cried. Certainly, if you wish it. I thank your majesty. There is no more to be done in the matter. I have the honor to wish you a very good morning. He bowed and turned away without observing the hand which the king had stretched out to him. He set off in my company for his chambers. And that was how a great scandal threatened to affect the kingdom of Bohemia, and how the best plans of Mr. Sherlock Holmes were beaten by a woman's wit. He used to make merry over the cleverness of women, but I have not heard him do it of late. And when he speaks of Irene Adler, or when he refers to her photograph, it is always under the honorable title of the woman. That concludes A Scandal in Bohemia. Interesting. No death, no bloodshed, no nothing. The woman. Interesting, huh? I remember that the BBC Sherlock Holmes did have this episode, A Scandal in Bohemia. Did it not? Was it the BBC one? Actually, I'm not sure. The woman. What's the BBC? Just ask one of the Beatos to show you. Yeah, I think I remember, because that was when we were introduced to Irene Adler, right? Or well, Irene Norton. Let's just say. Yeah, pretty nice. British Broadcasting. Does it actually stand for that? I don't know. But yeah, that was an interesting read. No murder or death. And it's the first time Holmes kind of meets his match. It's kind of interesting to see him get humbled. Right. Well. Novel is just better than the adaptation of Iron. Yeah, I remember not really liking her in the show, but reading the books, I was like, okay, maybe she's kind of slay, maybe she's kind of a girl boss, she's kind of got it. Yeah, novels are usually better. Usually, yeah. I mean, I can't really think of any instances where I've thought that the movie was better than the book in certain. I don't know, have you guys? But also I don't think I've read anything recently that's been adapted into a movie. ReZero probably. I don't think I ever finished ReZero, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, only my DM. Oh yeah, it can also be like manga and anime, I guess. Yeah, I can't really think of one off the top of my head. Yeah, I can think of so many instances where it's the other way around. Jurassic Park. The book is good, but I didn't know Jurassic Park had a book. Interesting. Books always have more detail. It's hard to convert it to video in a decent time and keep everything. Yeah. There's a lot of things that you can't really fit into 2 hours. Adaptations always try to insert a romance between Adler and Holmes, which is missing the point exactly. Like earlier in the first chapter, we heard Watson describe Holmes as a man of no, like, he doesn't give a shit about, like, well how do you describe the more intimate values of life. He doesn't care about like romance or sex as like is usually the case with hyper proficient autistic people. the artist of all time. Yep. Imagine being so autistic that you can pinpoint where a person has been just from like a singular speck of mud on their shoes. He's not even grinding. He's not doing this because of his work. He's just doing because that's just how his brain is built. Yeah, pure intelligence matching. It's just a battle of the wits, and that's why he's so enamored with her, because like he thinks of her as like a enigma, and not in like a romantic way. Like a, how the fuck did you beat me? How are you smarter than me? I must get to the bottom of this. Yeah. And that also cocaine. It triggered his tism. So true. Okay. Alright. We shall proceed down with the book. By the way, Hina, will you read any of the book's referenced in Limbus? On stream? It might be a long read. I am not sure. I definitely know that some of these books are pretty long. I've read Wuthering Heights. What else is there? Moby Dick. I haven't read Moby Dick, but I think I know generally what goes on in there. Maybe I should. Don Quixote de la Mancha Endurance. Oh god, how long is that thing? Isn't that thing like an epic? Or we will go by the order. Sherlock is mostly short stories, right? This one, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, is a collection of short stories. There are a couple main books, which are like long ones. Like a normal length book, not a short story. There's like a Study in Scarlet, Hounds of the Baskerville, things like that. Yeah, it's long, so that's why I chose these short ones, so we can get like small doses of Sherlock. Channel your inner TikTok, read and post via shorts until part 60. Oh god. Yeah, Valley of the Dream of the Red Chamber. Yeah, those are the big length ones. We need Sherlock 1 inch at a time? My God. Why would you say it like that? Why would you say it like that? Kennedy, thank you for the 100. Dang, I missed it. It's okay. We're about to head into the second story now. Go full depresso espresso and read Russian literature. Would you read some poems sometime? I might read some poetry next. I'll try some poetry next. And I also wanted to try some Lovecraftian that you guys recommended, because I've actually never read anything by him. Yeah, yippee! Yippee! I remember reading Poe in school. There was, the painting of something gray. And obviously the Raven. Cask of Amontillado kind of sounds... It sounds familiar to me. I don't know. Oh yeah, the painting of Dorian Gray, that one. that one, yeah. Okay, give me a second. I am going to refill my water and I will be right back. And then we will start with the next short story down the list, which is The Red-Headed League. League of Legends? Okay, but yeah, I'll be right back and I'll leave you with the Himebito. Be back.
Buzzing through the flowers just like a honeybee, with a little bit of sunshine and a whole lot of glee. I'm the queen of the hive, they call me Himebito. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way, making the world brighter every single day. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way, making the world brighter every single day. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. Flying through the meadows, feeling light and free. Buzzing through the flowers just like a honeybee, with a little bit of sunshine and a whole lot of glee. I'm the queen of the hive, they call me Himebito. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way, making the world brighter every single day. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way, making the world brighter every single day. Flying through the meadows, feeling light and free. Buzzing through the flowers just like a honeybee. With a little bit of sunshine and a whole lot of glee. I'm the queen of the hive, they call me Himebito. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way. Making the world brighter every single day. Honey on my lips, sweetness in my soul. Dancing on the petals, making hearts feel whole. From beehive to beehive, spreading love along the way. Making the world brighter every single day. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. I sing a sweet melody, all the birds chime in. Everybody dances, can't help but wear a grin. Life is like a honeycomb, always full of surprise. With my wings I'll take you to the blue skies. I am through.
Okay. Hello, sorry it took a while. My dog has taken to pissing right next to my cat's litter box. Probably trying to assert his dominance. I don't know. But he's taken to pissing right next to the litter box. Maybe to like maybe he smells like the scent of her going to the bathroom there, and he's like, right, I'm gonna show her who's box. Yeah, turf wars. They've literally been having pissing wars, like in the bathroom when I was gone. He wants to be the alpha. I'm sorry to tell you this, but Somi is. I think Somi thinks she's above me, so. Yeah, I think she thinks of herself as higher than even me. Piss in the litter box is her dominance on all of them. Oh god. Yeah, average cat behavior. Somi is god. She might as well be. Okay, well, let's move on to the next story, which is Red-Headed League. The Red-Headed League. The Summon-Natrix. Oh my god, that's a new nickname I'm gonna give her. You sometimes just call your pets like random names that aren't even their name. Like I'll call my dog like Biga Boy, Peepee Boy, Piga. Or I'll call my cat like Sozomi, Sominyan, Piga-chan. Yeah, it's a pet thing. Stinky ass. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's put our reading glasses on. I realized I didn't have my glasses this whole time. Oh, how could that be? I've been blind. I forgot to put on my glasses. Oh no. Shut up. Actually. Yeah, I was just squinting at the words. What is that? What's that? You just feel it. Actually, I've been reciting the entire thing from memory. You're welcome. Right. Next story. The Red-Headed League. Chapter 1. I had called upon my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, one day in the autumn of last year and found him in deep conversation with a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair. With an apology for my intrusion, I was about to withdraw when Holmes pulled me abruptly into the room and closed the door behind me. "You could not possibly have come at a better time, my dear Watson," he said cordially. "I was afraid that you were engaged. So I am. Very much so. Then I can wait in the next room." "Not at all. This gentleman, Mr. Wilson, has been my partner and helper in many of my most successful cases, and I have no doubts that he will be of the utmost use to me in yours also." The stout gentleman roused first from his chair and gave a bob of greeting, with a quick little questioning glance from his small, fat, encircled eyes. "Try the settee," said Holmes, relapsing into his armchair and putting his fingertips together, as was his custom when in judicial moods. "I know, my dear Watson, that you share my love of all that is bizarre and outside the conventions and humdrum routine of everyday life. You have shown your relish for it by the enthusiasm which has prompted you to chronicle, and if you will excuse my saying so, somewhat to embellish so many of your little adventures." "Your cases have been indeed of the greatest interest to me," I observed. "You will remember that I remarked the other day, just before we went into the very simple problem presented by Miss Mary Sutherland, that for strange effects and extraordinary combinations, we must go to life itself, which is always far more daring than any efforts of the imagination. Proposition which I took the liberty of doubting. You did, Doctor, but nonetheless you must come round to my view, for otherwise I shall keep on piling fact upon you, until your reason breaks down under them and acknowledges me to be right. Now, Mr. Jabez Wilson here has been good enough to call upon me this morning, and to begin a narrative which promises to be one of the most singular which I have listened to for some time. You have heard me remark that the strangest and most unique things are very often connected, not with the larger, with the smaller crimes, and occasionally indeed where there is room for doubt where any positive crime has been committed. As far as I've heard it, it is impossible for me to say whether the present case is an instance of crime or not, but the course of events is certainly among the most singular that I have ever listened to. Perhaps, Mr. Wilson, you would have the great kindness to recommence your narrative. I ask you not merely because my friend Dr. Watson has not heard the opening part, but also because the peculiar nature of the story makes me anxious to have every possible detail from your lips. As a rule, when I have heard some slight indication of the course of events, I am able to guide myself by the thousands of other similar cases which occur to my memory. In the present instance, I am forced to admit that the facts are, to the best of my belief, unique." The portly client puffed out his chest with an appearance of some little pride and pulled a dirty and wrinkled newspaper from the inside pocket of his greatcoat. As he glanced down the advertisement column, with his head thrust forward and the paper flattened out upon his knee, I took a good look at the man and endeavored, after the fashion of my companion, to read the indications which might be presented by his dress or appearance. I did not gain very much, however, by my inspection. Our visitor bore every mark of being an average commonplace British tradesman, obese, pompous, and slow. He wore rather baggy grey shepherd's check trousers, a not over clean black frock coat, unbuttoned in the front, and a drab waistcoat with a heavy brassy Albert chain, and a square pierced bit of metal dangling down as an ornament. A frayed top hat and a faded brown overcoat with a wrinkled velvet collar lay upon a chair beside him. Altogether, look as I would, there was nothing remarkable about the man save his blazing red head, and the expression of extreme chagrin and discontent upon his features. Sherlock Holmes' quick eye took in my occupation, and he shook his head with a smile as he noticed my questioning glances. Beyond the obvious facts that he has at some time done manual labor, that he takes snuff, that he is a Freemason, that he has been in China, and that he has done a considerable amount of writing lately, I can deduce nothing else. Mr. Jabez Wilson started up in his chair, with his forefinger upon the paper, but his eyes upon my companion. "How in the name of good fortune did you know all that, Mr. Holmes? How did you know, for example, that I did manual labor? It's True as gospel, for I began as a ship's carpenter. Your hands, my dear sir. Your right hand is quite a size larger than your left. You have worked with it, and the muscles are more developed. Well, the snuff then, and the Freemasonry. I won't insult your intelligence by telling you how I read that, especially as, rather against the strict rules of your order, you use an arc and compass breastpin. Ah, of course, I felt that. But the writing? What else can be indicated by that right cuff so very shiny for 5 inches, and the left one with the smooth patch near the elbow where you rest it upon the desk? Well, but China? The fish that you have tattooed immediately above your right wrist could have only been done in China. I have made a small study of tattoo marks and have even contributed to the literature of the subject. The trick of staining the fish's scales of a delicate pink is quite peculiar to China. When, in addition, I see a Chinese coin hanging from your watch chain, the matter becomes even more simple. Mr. Himebito laughed heavily. Oh, well, I never, said he. I thought at first that you had done something clever, but I see that there was nothing in it after all. I begin to think, Watson, said Holmes, that I make a mistake in explaining. Omne ignotum pro magnifico, and my poor little reputation, such as it is, will suffer shipwreck if I am so candid. Can you not find the advertisement, Mr. Wilson? I don't know what that Latin means, by the way. Yes, I have got it now, he answered with his thick red finger planted halfway down the column. Here it is. This is what began it all. You just read it for yourself, sir. I took the paper from him and read as follows. To the Red-Headed League. On account of the bequest of the late Ezekiel Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open, which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind and above the age of 21 years are eligible. Apply in person on Monday at 11 o'clock to Duncan Ross at the offices of the League, 7 Popes Court, Fleet Street. What on earth does this mean? I ejaculated after I had twice... Sorry. I ejaculated after I had twice read over the extraordinary announcement. Sorry, just casually ejaculates. That's what it says. I'm sorry. Okay, should I say I exclaimed after I had twice read over the extraordinary announcement? Haha, I do that. What the fuck? Toby, no, you're turning into Con Steve. Okay, anyways. Holmes chuckled and wriggled in his chair, as was his habit when in high spirits. It is a little off the beaten track, isn't it? Said he. And now, Mr. Wilson, off you go at scratch and tell us all about yourself, your household, and the effect which this advertisement had upon your fortunes. You will first make a note, Doctor, of the paper and the date. It is the Morning Chronicle of April 27th, 1890, just 2 months ago. Very good. Now, Mr. Wilson. Well, it is just as I have been telling you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Himebito, mopping his forehead. I have a small pawnbroker's business at Coburg Square near the city. It's not a very large affair, and as of late years, it has not done more than just give me a living. I used to be able to keep 2 assistants, but now I only keep 1, and I would have a job to pay him, but that he is willing to come for half wages so as to learn the business. What is the name of this obliging youth? Asked Sherlock Holmes. His name is Vincent Spaulding, and he's not such a youth either. It's hard to say his age, and I should not wish a smarter assistant, Mr. Holmes, and I know very well that he could better himself and earn twice what I am able to give him. But after all, if he is satisfied, why should I put ideas in his head? Why, indeed? You seem most fortunate in having an employee who comes under the full market price. It is not a common experience among employers in this age. I don't know that your assistant is not as remarkable as your advertisement. Oh, he has his faults too, said Mr. Wilson. Never was such a fellow for photography. Snapping away with a camera when he ought to be improving his mind, and then diving down into the cellar like a rabbit into its hole to develop his pictures. That is his main fault, but on the whole, he's a good worker. There's no vice in him. He is still with you, I presume? Yes, sir. He and a girl of 14 who does a bit of simple cooking and keeps the place clean. That's all I have in the house, for I am a widower and never had any family. We live very quietly, sir, the three of us, and we keep a roof over our heads and pay our debts if we do nothing more. The first thing that put us out was that advertisement. Spaulding? He came down into the office just this day 8 weeks, with this very paper in his hand, and he says, "I wish to the Lord, Mr. Wilson, that I was a red-headed man." "Why that?" I asked. "Why," says he, "here's another vacancy on the League of the Red-Headed Men. It's worth quite a little fortune to any man that gets it, and I understand that there are more vacancies than there are men, so that the trustees are at their wits' end what to do with the money. If my hair would only change color, here's a nice little crib all ready for me to step into." "Why, what is it then?" I asked. "You see, Mr. Holmes, I am a very stay-at-home man, and as my business came to me instead of my having to go to it, I was often weeks on end without putting my foot over the doormat. In that way, I didn't know much of what was going on outside, and I was always glad of a bit of news." "Have you never heard of the League of the Red-Headed Men?" he asked with his eyes open. "Never? Why, I wonder at that, for you are eligible yourself for one of the vacancies." "And what are they worth?" "Oh, merely a couple hundred a year, but the work is slight, and it need not interfere very much with one's other occupations. Also, hi Amy, hello Hams, hello Lab Hams, welcome. We are just reading through one of the short stories in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes called The Red-Headed League, and so far it's about a league of redheads, like an elite group of people with red hair who up labbing the ham. Me. Yeah, hi Amy, hi Hamsters. Okay, but we're gonna continue. We're not too far into the story. We're only still on the first chapter, so you can still catch up a bit. Right. Okay, where were we? "Well, you can easily think that made me prick up my ears, for the business has not been over good for some years, and an extra couple of hundred would have been very handy." "Tell me all about it," said I. "Well," said he, showing me the advertisement, "you can see for yourself that the league has a vacancy, and there is the address where you should apply for particulars. As far as I can make out, the league was founded by an American millionaire, Ezekiel Hopkins, who was very peculiar in his ways. He was himself red-headed, and he had a great sympathy for all red-headed men, so when he died, it was found that he had left his enormous fortune in the hands of trustees, with instructions to apply the interest of providing of easy birth to men whose head is of that color. From all I hear, it is splendid pay and very little to do so." "But," said I, "there would be millions of red-headed men who would apply." "Not so many as you might think," he answered. "You see, it is really confined to Londoners and to grown men. This American had started from London when he was young, and he had wanted to do the old town a good turn. Then again, I have heard it is no use you applying if your hair is light red or dark red or anything but real bright, blazing, fiery red. Now, if you care to apply, Mr. Wilson, you would just walk in, but perhaps it would hardly be worth your while to put yourself out of the way for the sake of a few £100. Now, it is a fact, gentlemen, as you may see for yourself, that my hair is of a very full and rich tint, so it seemed to me that if there was to be any competition in the matter, I stood as good as a chance as any man that I had ever met. Vincent Spaulding seems to know so much about it that I thought he might prove useful, so I just ordered him to put up the shutters for the day and to come right away with me. He was very willing to have a holiday, so we shut the business up and started off for the address that was given us in the advertisement. I never hoped to see such a sight as that again, Mr. Holmes. From north, south, east, and west, every man who had a shade of red in his hair had tramped into the city to answer the advertisement. Fleet Street was choked with red-headed folk, and Pope's Court looked like a coster's orange barrow. I should not have thought there were so many in the whole country as were brought together by that single advertisement. Every shade of color they were. Straw, lemon, orange, brick, Irish setter, liver, clay. As Spaulding said, there were not many who had the real vivid flame-colored tint. When I saw how many were waiting, I would have given it up in despair, but Spaulding would not hear of it. How he did it, I could not imagine, but he pushed and pulled and butted till he got me through the crowd and right up to the steps which led to the office. There was a double stream upon the stairs, some going up in hope and some coming back dejected, but we wedged in as well as we could and soon found ourselves in the office. "Your experience has been a most entertaining one," remarked Holmes as his client paused and refreshed his memory with a huge pinch of snuff. "Pray continue your very interesting statement." There was nothing in the office but a couple of wooden chairs and a deal table, behind which sat a small man with a head that was even redder than mine. He said a few words to each candidate as he came up, and then he always managed to find some fault in them which would disqualify them. Getting a vacancy did not seem to be such a very easy matter after all. However, when our turn came, the little man was much more favorable to me than any of the others, and as he closed the door as we entered, so that he might have a private word of us. "This is Mr. Jabez Wilson," said my assistant, "and he is willing to fill a vacancy in the league." "And he is admirably suited for it," the other answered. "He has every requirement. I cannot recall when I have seen anything so fine." He took a step backward, cocked his head on one side, and gazed at my hair until I felt quite bashful. Then suddenly he plunged forward, wrung my hand, and congratulated me on my success. "It would be injustice to hesitate. You will, however, I am sure, excuse me for taking an obvious precaution." With that, he seized my hair in both his hands and tugged until I yelled with the pain. "There is water in your eyes," said he as he released me. "I perceive that all is as it should be. We have to be careful, for we have twice been deceived by wigs and once by paint. I could tell you tales of cobbler's wax which would disgust you with human nature." He stepped over to the window and shouted through it at the top of his voice that the vacancy was filled. A groan of disappointment came from below, and the folk all trooped away in different directions until there was not a redhead to be seen except my own and that of the manager. "My name," said he, "is Mr. Duncan Ross, and I am myself one of the pensioners upon the fund left by our noble benefactor. Are you a married man, Mr. Wilson? Have you a family?" I answered that I had not. His face fell immediately. "Dear me," he said gravely. "That is very serious indeed. I am sorry to hear you say that. The fund was, of course, for the propagation and spread of the redheads as well as for their maintenance. It is exceedingly unfortunate that you shall be a bachelor." Oh God. My face lengthened at this, Mr. Holmes, for I thought that I was not to have the vacancy after all. But after thinking about it for a few minutes, he said that it would be all right. "In the case of another," said he, "the objection might be fatal, but we must stretch a point in favor of a man with such a head of hair as yours. When shall you be able to enter upon your new duties?" "Well, it is a little awkward, for I have a business already," said I. "Oh, never mind about that, Mr. Wilson," said Vincent Spaulding. "I should be able to look after that for you." "What would be the hours?" I asked. 10 to 2. Now, a pawnbroker's business is mostly done of an evening, Mr. Holmes, especially Thursday and Friday evening, which is just before payday, so it would suit me very well to earn a little in the mornings. Besides, I knew that my assistant was a good man, and that he would see to anything that turned up. "That would suit me very well," said I. "And the pay is £4 a week. And the work is purely nominal." "What do you call purely nominal?" "Well, you have to be in the office, or at least in the building, for the whole time. If you leave, you forfeit your whole position forever. The will is very clear upon that point. You don't comply with the conditions if you budge from the office during that time." "It's only 4 hours a day, and I should not think of leaving," said I. "No excuse will avail," said Mr. Duncan Ross. "Neither sickness nor business nor anything else. There you must stay, or you lose your billet. And the work is to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica. There is the first volume of it in that press. You must find your own ink, pens, and blotting paper, but we provide this table and chair. Will you be ready tomorrow?" "Certainly," I answered. Then goodbye, Mr. Jabez Wilson, and let me congratulate you once more on the important position which you have been fortunate enough to gain." He bowed me out of the room and I went home with my assistant, hardly knowing what to say or do. I was so pleased at my own good fortune. Well, I thought over the matter all day, and by evening, I was in low spirits again, for I had persuaded myself that the whole affair must be some great hoax or fraud, though what its object might be I could not imagine. It seemed altogether past belief that anyone can make a will, or that they would pay such a sum for doing anything so simple as copying out the Encyclopedia Britannica. Vincent Spaulding did what he could to cheer me up. By bedtime, I had reasoned myself out of the whole thing. However, in the morning, I determined to have a look at it anyhow, so I bought a penny bottle of ink, and with a quill pen and 7 sheets of foolscap paper, I started off for Pope's Court. Well, to my surprise and delight, everything was as right as possible. The table was set out ready for me, and Mr. Duncan Ross was there to see that I got fairly to work. He started me off upon the letter A, and then he left me, but he would drop in from time to time to see that all was right with me. At 2 o'clock, he bade me good day, complimented me upon the amount I had written, and locked the door of the office after me. This went on day after day, Mr. Holmes, and on Saturday, the manager came in and planked down 4 golden sovereigns for my week's work. It was the same next week, and the same the week after. Every morning I was there at 10, and every afternoon I left at 2. By degrees, Mr. Duncan Ross took to coming in only once of a morning, and then after a time he did not come in at all. Still, of course, I never dared to leave the room for an instant, for I was not sure when he might come, and the billet was such a good one and suited me so well that I would not risk the loss of it. 8 weeks passed away like this, and I had written about abbots in archery, in armor, in architecture, in Attica, and hoped with diligence that I might get onto the B's before very long. It cost me something in foolscap, and I had pretty nearly filled a shelf of my writings. And then suddenly the whole business came to an end. To an end? Yes, sir. And no later than this morning. I went to my work as usual at 10 o'clock, but the door was shut and locked, with a little square of cardboard hammered onto the middle of the panel of attack. Here it is, and you can read for yourself. He held up a piece of white cardboard about the size of a sheet of notepaper. It read in this fashion: "The Red-Headed League is dissolved. October 9th, 1890. Sherlock Holmes and I surveyed this curt announcement and the rueful face behind it, until the comical side of the affair so completely overtopped every other consideration that we both burst out into a roar of laughter. "I cannot see that there is anything very funny," cried our client, flushing up to the roots of his flaming head. "If you can do nothing better than laugh at me, I can go elsewhere." "No, no," cried Holmes, shoving him back into the chair from which he had half risen. "I really wouldn't miss your case for the world. It is most refreshingly unusual. But there is, if you will excuse my saying so, something just a little funny about it. Pray, what steps did you take when you found upon the card on the door?" "I was staggered, sir. I did not know what to do. Then I called the officers around, but none of them seemed to know anything about it. Finally, I went to the landlord, who was an accountant living on the ground floor, and I asked him if he could tell me what had become of the Red-Headed League. He said that he had never heard of any such body. Then I asked who Mr. Duncan Ross was. He answered that the name was new to him. "Well," said I, "the gentleman at number 4. "What, the red-headed man?" "Yes." "Oh," said he, "his name was William Morris. He was a solicitor and was using my room as a temporary convenience until his new premises were ready. He moved out yesterday." "Where could I find him?" "Oh, at his new offices. He did tell me the address. Yes, 17 King Edward Street, near St. Paul's." I started off, Mr. Holmes, but when I got to that address, it was a manufactory of artificial kneecaps, and no one in it had ever heard of either Mr. William Morris or Mr. Duncan Ross. "And what did you do then?" asked Holmes. "I went home to Saxe Coburg Square, and I took the advice of my assistant, but he could not help me in any way. He could only say that if I waited, I should hear by post. But that was not quite good enough, Mr. Holmes. I did not wish to lose such a place without a struggle, as I had heard that you were good enough to give advice to poor folk who were in need of it. I came right away to you." "And you did very wisely," said Holmes. "Your case is an exceedingly remarkable one, and I shall be happy to look into it. From what you have told me, I think it is possible that graver issues hang from it that might at first appear." "Grave enough," said Mr. Jabez Wilson. "Why, I have lost £4 a week." "As far as you are personally concerned," remarked Holmes, "I do not see that you have any grievance against this extraordinary league. On the contrary, you are, as I understand, richer by some £30, to say nothing on the minute knowledge which you have gained on every subject which comes under the letter A. You have lost nothing by them." "No, sir, but I want to find out about them, and who they are, and what their object was in playing this prank, if it was a prank, upon me. It was a pretty expensive joke for them, for it cost them £2 and £30. "We shall endeavour to clear up these points for you. And first, 1 or 2 questions, Mr. Wilson. This assistant of yours who first called your attention to the advertisement, how long had he been with you?" "About a month, then." "How did he come?" "In answer to an advertisement." "Was he the only applicant?" "No, I had a dozen." "Why did you pick him?" "Because he was handy and would come cheap." "At half wages, in fact." "Yes." "What is he like, this Vincent Spaulding?" "Small, stout-built, very quick in his ways, no hair on his face, though he's not short of 30. Has a white splash of acid upon his forehead." Holmes sat up in his chair in considerable excitement. "I thought as much," said he. "Have you ever observed that his ears are pierced for earrings?" "Yes, sir. He told me that a gypsy had done it for him when he was a lad." Said Mr. Holmes, sinking back in deep thought. "He is still with you?" "Oh, yes, sir. I have only just left him." "And has your business been attended to in your absence?" "Nothing to complain of, sir. There's never very much to do of a morning." "That will do, Mr. Wilson. I shall be happy to give you an opinion upon the subject in the course of a day or 2. Today is Saturday, and I hope by Monday we may come to a conclusion." "Well, Watson," said Holmes when our visitor had left us, "what do you make of it all?" "I make nothing of it," I answered frankly. "It is a most mysterious business." "As a rule," said Holmes, "the more bizarre a thing is, the less mysterious it proves to be. It is your commonplace, featureless crimes which are really puzzling, just as a commonplace face is the most difficult to identify. But I must be prompt over this matter." "What are you going to do, then?" I asked. "To smoke," he answered. "It is quite a 3-pipe problem, and I beg that you won't speak to me for 50 minutes." He curled himself up in his chair, with his thin knees drawn up to his hawk-like nose, and there he sat with his eyes closed and his black clay pipe thrusting out like the bill of some strange bird. I had come to the conclusion that he had dropped asleep, and indeed was nodding myself, when he suddenly sprang out of the chair with the gesture of a man who has made up his mind, and put his pipe down upon the mantelpiece. "Sarasate plays at the St. James Hall this afternoon," he remarked. "What do you think, Watson? Could your patient spare you a few hours?" "I have nothing to do today. My practice is never very absorbing." "Then put on your hat and come. I am going through the city first, and we can have some lunch on the way. I observe that there is a good deal of German music on the program, which is rather more to my taste than Italian or French. It is introspective, and I want to introspect. Come along." "Hi, Allie. Hello. Thank you for the raid. Welcome." For those of you that don't know me, my name is Himemiya Rie from Facing Next Gen 2-Face Alias, and today I am reading through some short stories from Sherlock Holmes. We are currently in the middle of Chapter 1 of the Red-Headed League. Puff the magic dragon, live by the sea. But yes, welcome. I hope you had a lovely stream. Hopefully this one is one that you can close your eyes, sit back, and relax to. Okay. Anyways, the story we are reading currently is about a group of red-headed people, an elite society only for gingers, that apparently pays you £4 a week, which was a lot back then in the time. It pays you £4 a week to copy out the entire Encyclopedia Britannica from A to Z, and has suddenly disappeared as if it never existed. So now we are currently We are currently investigating to see what happened to it. What happened? The Ginger Illuminati. You say you don't want to sleep. Oh, you can take a rest if you need to. Okay, as long as it's relaxing for you. Okay. Anyways, back to the story. Give me a second. We traveled by the underground as far as Aldersgate, and a short walk took us to 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐵 Square, scene of the singular story which we had listened to in the morning. It was a poky, little shabby genteel place where 4 lines of dingy 2-storied brick houses looked out into a small, railed-in enclosure, where a lawn of weedy grass and a few clumps of faded laurel bushes made a hard fight against a smoke-laden and uncongenial atmosphere. 3 gilt balls and a brown board with Habes Wilson in white letters upon the corner house announced the place where our red-headed client carried on his business. Sherlock Holmes stopped in front of it with his head on one side and looked at it all over, with his eyes shining brightly between puckered lids. Then he walked slowly up the street and then down again to the corner, still looking keenly at the houses. Finally, he returned to the pawnbroker's, and having thumped vigorously upon the pavement with his stick 2 or 3 times, he went up to the door and opened. It was instantly opened by a bright-looking, clean-shaven young fellow, who asked him to step in. "Thank you," said Holmes. "I only wished to ask you how you would go from here to the Strand." "3rd right, 4th left," answered the assistant promptly, closing the door. "Smart fellow, that," observed Holmes as we walked away. "He is, in my judgment, the 4th smartest man in London, and for daring I am not sure that he has not a claim to be 3rd. I have known something of him before." "Evidently," said I, "Mr. Wilson's assistant counts for a good deal in this mystery of the Red-Headed League. I am sure that you inquired your way merely in order that you might see him." "Not him. What then?" "The knees of his trousers. And what did you expect to see?" "What I expected to see." "Why did you beat the pavement?" "My dear doctor, this is a time for observation, not for talk. We are spies in an enemy's country. We know something of 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐵 Square. Let us now explore the parts which lie behind it." The road in which we found ourselves as we turned around the corner from the retired 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐵 Square presented as great a contrast to it as the front of a picture does to the back. It was one of the main arteries which conveyed the traffic of the city to the north and the west. The roadway was blocked with the immense stream of commerce flowing in a double tide inward and outward, while the footpaths were black with the hurrying swarm of pedestrians. It was difficult to realize as we looked at the line of fine shops and stately business premises that they really abutted on the other side upon the faded and stagnant square which we had just quitted. "Let me see," said Holmes, standing at the corner and glancing along the line. "I should like just to remember the order of the houses here. It is a hobby of mine to have an exact knowledge of London. There is Mortimer's, the tobacconist, the little newspaper shop, the Coburg branch of the City and Suburban Bank, the vegetarian restaurant, and McFarlane's carriage building depot. That carries us right on to the other block. And now, Doctor, we've done our work, so it's time we had some play. A sandwich and cup of coffee, then off to violin land where all is sweetness and delicacy and harmony, and there are no red-headed clients to vex us with their conundrums." My friend was a very enthusiastic musician, being himself not only a very capable performer, but a composer of no ordinary merit. All the afternoon he sat in the stalls wrapped in the most perfect happiness, gently waving his long, thin fingers in time to the music, while his gently smiling face and languid, dreamy eyes were as unlike those of Holmes the sleuth-hound, Holmes the relentless, keen-witted, ready-handed criminal agent, as it was possible to conceive. In his singular character, the dual nature alternately asserted himself, and his extreme exactness and astuteness represented, as I have often thought, the reaction against the poetic and contemplative mood which occasionally predominated in him. The swing of his nature took him from extreme languor to devouring energy, and as I knew well, he was never so truly formidable as when, for days on end, he had been lounging in his armchair amid his improvisations and his black-letter editions. Then it was the lust of the chase which suddenly come upon him then, and that his brilliant reasoning power would rise to the level of intuition until those who were unacquainted with his methods would look askance at him as on a man whose knowledge was not that of other mortals. When I saw him that afternoon so enwrapped in the music at St. James Hall, I felt that an evil time might be coming upon those whom he had set himself to hunt down. "You want to go home, no doubt, Doctor," he remarked as we emerged. "Yes, it would be as well. And I have some business to do which will take some hours. This business at Coburg Square is serious." "Why serious?" "A considerable crime is in contemplation. I have every reason to believe that we shall be in time to stop it. But today being Saturday rather complicates matters. I shall want your help tonight." "At what time?" 10 will be early enough. I shall be at Baker Street at 10. "Very well. And I say, Doctor, there may be some little danger, so kindly put your army revolver in your pocket." He waved his hand, turned on his heel, and disappeared in an instant among the crowd. I trust that I am not more dense than my neighbors, but I was always oppressed with a sense of my own stupidity in my dealings with Sherlock Holmes. Here I had heard what he had heard, I had seen what he had seen, and yet, from his words, it was evidence that he had clearly saw not only what had happened, but what was about to happen, while to me the whole business was still confused and grotesque. As I drove home to my house in Kensington, I thought it over, all from the extraordinary story of the red-headed copier of the encyclopedia down to the visit to Coburg Square, and the ominous words with which he had parted from me. What was this nocturnal expedition, and why should I go armed? Where were we going, and what were we to do? I had the hint from Holmes that this smooth-faced pawnbroker's assistant was a formidable man, a man who might play a deep game. I tried to puzzle it out, but gave it up in despair and set the matter aside until night should bring an explanation. And that is the end of chapter 1, I believe, or well, where I would cut it at chapter 1. My God, it was a long one. Also, Sven, thank you for the super chat earlier. Yeah, check. He's got to check the lower hairs to make sure he's really a redhead. Yeah, long chapter this time. This one's a long boy. I hope you enjoyed it. Very peculiar. I don't know. Usually when you guys read detective stories or like watch detective movies, do you guys try to theorize like what happened in the plot? Do you try to come to a conclusion before the story ends, or do you just sit back and wait for it to end? Like, do you just sit back and wait for it all to unravel on your own? And try to piece it together before the big reveal? Yeah? Yeah. That's where the fun is, isn't it? I think it depends on my mood. If I just want to sit back and enjoy a good story, then I will just switch off my brain and read on. But sometimes if I'm feeling a little hyper or a little what do you call it? A little manic, then I'll pull out the schizoboards. Yeah, I'll write things down in a notebook. The fun is after the movie, rewatching and seeing the hints that you missed the first time. Yes! Have you guys ever watched the Benoit Blanc movie? The what's it called? Knives Out? Have you guys ever seen Knives Out? I rave about that series so much. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite movies, I think. Yeah, it was so good. Yeah, Benoit Blanc. Yeah, there was also a recent one that came out, Glass Onion. I think it came out like it was about the pandemic. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Definitely, I wanna marathon both of those movies with you guys in membership sometime. It's great. It's great. Yeah. Also, Chris Evans was in the first one, and the girl from fucking 13 Reasons Why, I think. Yeah, there's a lot of... They really pull out all the stops for those movies. Like, they get really good actors. There's also the mother from oh God, what's it called? Hereditary. There's the mom from Hereditary in that one, I think. Glass Onion, yeah. And was that Dave Bautista, I think? Yeah, I love the drama. It was so funny. Yeah, MILF. Venom was so pissed at the villain. Yeah, it was really funny. Toni Collette. Yeah, that's her. That's her. Incredible actor. Okay. Are we ready to set into the next part of the story? Shall we begin? Shall we begin? Okay. Let me take a drink. Vita soy. Right. It was 9:15 when I started from home and made my way across the park, and so through Oxford Street to Baker Street. 2 hansoms were standing at the door, and as I entered the passage, I heard the sound of voices from above. On entering his room, I found Holmes in animated conversation with 2 men, one of whom I recognized as Peter Jones, the official police agent, while the other was a long, thin, sad-faced man with a very shiny hat and oppressively respectable frock coat. "Ha! Our party is complete," said Holmes, buttoning up his pea jacket and taking his heavy hunting crop from the rack. "Watson, I think you know Mr. Jones of Scotland Yard. Let me introduce you to Mr. Merryweather, who is to be our companion in tonight's adventure." "We're hunting in couples again, Doctor, you see," said Jones in his consequential way. "Our friend here is a wonderful man for starting a chase. All he wants is an old dog to help him to do the rundown." "I hope a wild goose may not prove to be the end of our chase," observed Mr. Merryweather gloomily. "You may place considerable confidence in Mr. Holmes, sir," said the police agent loftily. "He has his own little methods, which are, if you won't mind my saying so, just a little too theoretical and fantastic, but he has the makings of a detective in him. It is not too much to say that once or twice, as in that business of the Sholto murder and the Agra treasure, he has been more nearly correct than the official force." "Oh, if you say so, Mr. Jones, it is all right," said the stranger with deference. "Still, I confess that I miss my rubber. It is the first Saturday night for 27 years that I have not had my rubber." "I think you will find," said Sherlock Holmes, "that you will play for a higher stake tonight than you have ever done yet, and that the play will be more exciting. For you, Mr. Merryweather, the stake will be some £30,000, and for you, Jones, it will be the man upon whom you wish to lay your hands. John Clay, the murderer, thief, smasher, and forger. He's a young man, Mr. Merryweather, but he is at the head of his profession, and I would rather have my bracelets on him than on any criminal in London. He's a remarkable man, is young John Clay. His grandfather was a royal duke, and he himself has been to Eton and Oxford. His brain is as cunning as his fingers, and though we meet signs of him at every turn, we never know where to find the man himself. He'll crack a crib in Scotland one week and be raising money to build an orphanage in Cornwall the next. I've been on his track for years and have never set eyes on him yet. I hope that I may have the pleasure of introducing you tonight. I've also had one or two little turns with Mr. John Clay, and I agree with you that he is at the head of his profession. It is past 10, however, and quite time that we started. If you two will take the first hansom, Watson and I will follow in a second." Sherlock Holmes was not very communicative during the long drive and lay back in the cab humming the tunes which he had heard in the afternoon. We rattled through an endless labyrinth of gas-lit streets until we emerged into Farrington Street. "We are close there now," my friend remarked. "This fellow Merryweather is a bank director and personally interested in the matter. I thought it as well to have Jones with us also. He is not a bad fellow, though an absolute imbecile in his profession. He has one positive virtue. He is as brave as a bulldog and as tenacious as a lobster if he gets his claws upon anyone. Here we are, and they are waiting for us." We had reached the same crowded thoroughfare in which we had found ourselves in the morning. Our cabs were dismissed, and following the guidance of Mr. Merryweather, we passed through a narrow passage and through a side door, which he opened for us. Within there was a small corridor which ended in a very massive iron gate. This also was open and led down a flight of winding stone steps which terminated at another formidable gate. Mr. Merryweather stopped to light a lantern and then conducted us after down a dark-smelling passage, and so, after opening a third door, into a huge vault or cellar, which was piled all around with crates and massive boxes. "You are not very vulnerable from above," Holmes remarked as he held up the lantern and gazed about him. "Nor from below," said Mr. Merriweather, striking his stick upon the flags which lined the door. "Why, dear me, it sounds quite hollow," he remarked, looking up in surprise. "I must really ask you to be a little more quiet," said Holmes severely. "You have already imperiled the whole success of our expedition. Might I beg that you would have the goodness to sit down upon one of these boxes and not to interfere?" The solemn Mr. Merriweather perched himself upon a crate with a very injured expression upon his face, while Holmes fell upon his knees upon the floor and, with the lantern and a magnifying glass, began to examine minutely the cracks between the stones. A few seconds sufficed to satisfy him, for he sprang to his feet again and put his glass in his pocket. "We have at least an hour before us," he remarked, "for they can hardly take any steps until the good pawnbroker is safely in bed. Then they will not lose a minute, for the sooner they do their work, the longer time they will have for their escape. We are, at present, Doctor, as no doubt you have divined, in the cellar of the city branch of one of the principal London banks. Mr. Merriweather is the chairman of directors, and he will explain to you that there are reasons why the more daring criminals of London should take a considerable interest in the cellar at present." "It is our French gold," whispered the director. "We have had several warnings that an attempt might be made upon it." "Your French gold?" "Yes. We had on occasion some months ago to strengthen our resources and borrowed for that purpose 30,000 Napoleons from the Bank of France. It has become known that we have never had occasion to unpack the money and that it is still lying in our cellar. The crate upon which I sit contains 2,000 Napoleons packed between layers of lead foil. Our reserve of bullion is much larger at present than is usually kept in a single branch office, and the directors have had misgivings upon the subject." "Which were very well justified," observed Holmes. "And now it is time that we arranged our little plans. I expect that within an hour matters will come to a head. In the meantime, Mr. Merriweather, we must put the screen over that dark lantern." "And sit in the dark?" "I'm afraid so. I had brought a pack of cards in my pocket, and I thought that, as we were partie carrée, you might have your rubber after all. But I see that the enemy's preparations have gone so far that we cannot risk the presence of a light. And first of all, we must choose our positions. These are daring men, and though we shall take them at a disadvantage, they may do us some harm unless we are careful. I shall stand behind this crate, and you conceal yourselves behind those. Then, when I flash a light upon them, close in swiftly. If they fire, Watson, have no compunction about shooting them down." I placed my revolver, cocked, upon the top of the wooden case behind which I crouched. Holmes shot the slide across the front of his lantern and left us in complete pitch darkness, such an absolute darkness as I have never before experienced. The smell of hot metal remained to assure us that the light was still there, ready to flash out at a moment's notice. To me, with my nerves worked up to a pitch of expectancy, there was something depressing and subduing in the sudden gloom and the cold, dank air of the vault. "They have but one retreat," whispered Holmes. "That is, back through the house into Saxe-Coburg Square. I hope that you have done what I have asked you, Jones?" "I have an inspector and 2 officers waiting at the front door." "Then we have stopped all the holes. Now we must be silent and wait." What a time it seemed! From comparing notes afterwards, it was but an hour and a quarter, yet it appeared to me that the night must have almost gone and the dawn be breaking above us. My limbs were weary and stiff, for I feared to change my position, yet my nerves were worked up to the highest pitch of tension, and my hearing was so acute that I could not only hear the gentle breathing of my companions, but I could distinguish the deeper, heavier in-breath of the bulky Jones from the thin, sighing notes of the bank director. From my position, I could look over the case the direction of the floor. Suddenly, my eyes caught the glint of a light. At first, it was but a lurid spark upon the stone pavement. Then, it lengthened out until it became a yellow line, and then, without any warning or sound, a gash seemed to open, and a hand appeared, a white, almost womanly hand, which felt about in the center of the little area of light. For a minute or more, the hand, with its writhing fingers, protruded out of the floor. Then it was withdrawn as suddenly as it appeared, and all was dark again save the single lurid spark which marked a chink between the stones. Its disappearance, however, was but momentary. With a rending, tearing sound, one of the broad white stones turned over on its side and left a square gaping hole, through which streamed the light of a lantern. Over the edge, there peeped a clean-cut, boyish face, which looked keenly about it, and then, with a hand on either side of the aperture, drew itself shoulder-high and waist-high until one knee rested upon the edge. In another instant, he stood at the side of the hole and was hauling after him with a companion, lithe and small like himself, with a pale face and a shock of very red hair. "It's all clear," he whispered. "Have you the chisel and the bags? Great Scott! Jump, Archie, jump, and I'll swing for it!" Sherlock Holmes had sprung out and seized the intruder by the collar. The other dived down the hole, and I heard the sound of rending cloth as Jones clutched at his skirts. The light flashed upon the barrel of a revolver, but Holmes' hunting crop came down on the man's wrist, and the pistol clinked upon the stone floor. "It's no use, John Clay," said Holmes blandly. "You have no chance at all." "So I see," the other answered with the utmost coolness. "I fancy that my pal is right, all right, although I see you have got his coattails." "There are 3 men waiting for him at the door," said Holmes. "Oh, indeed! You seem to have done the thing very completely. I must compliment you." "And I you," Holmes answered. "Your red-headed idea was very new and effective." "You'll see your pal again presently," said Jones. "He's quicker at climbing down holes than I am. Just hold out while I fix the derbies." "I beg that you will not touch me with your filthy hands," remarked our prisoner as the handcuffs clattered upon his wrists. "You may not be aware that I have royal blood in my veins. Have the goodness, also, when you address me, to always say sir and please." "All right," said Jones with a stare and a snigger. "Well, would you please, sir, march upstairs, where we can get a cab to carry your highness to the police station?" "That is better," said John Clay serenely. He made a sweeping bow to the 3 of us and walked quietly off in the custody of the detective. "Really, Mr. Holmes," said Mr. Merriweather as he followed them from the cellar, "I do not know how the bank can thank you or repay you. There is no doubt that you have detected and defeated, in the most complete manner, one of the most determined attempts at bank robbery that have ever come within my experience. I have had 1 or 2 little scores of my own to settle with Mr. John Clay," said Mr. Holmes. "I have been at some small expense over this matter, which I shall expect the bank to refund. But beyond that, I am amply repaid by having had experience which is in many ways unique, and by hearing the very remarkable narrative of the Red-Headed League. You see, Watson," he explained in the early hours of the morning as we sat over a glass of whiskey and soda in Baker Street, "it was perfectly obvious from the first that the only possible object of this rather fantastic business of the advertisement of the League and this copying of the encyclopedia must be to get this not overbright pawnbroker out of the way for a number of hours every day. It was a curious way of managing it, but really, it would be difficult to suggest a better. This method was no doubt suggested to Clay's ingenious mind by the color of his accomplice's hair. The £4 a week was a lure which must draw him, and what was it to them who were playing for thousands? They put in the advertisement, one rogue has a temporary office, the other rogue incites a man to apply for it, and together they managed to secure his absence every morning in the week. From that time that I heard of the assistant having come for half wages, it was obvious to me that he had some strong motive for securing the situation." "But how could you guess the motive was?" "Had there been women in the house, I should have suspected a mere vulgar intrigue. That, however, was out of the question. The man's business was a small one, and there was nothing in his house which could account for such elaborate preparations and such an expenditure as they were at. It must be, then, something out of the house. What could it be? I thought of the assistant's fondness for photography and his trick of vanishing into the cellar. The cellar! There was the end to this tangled clue. Then I made inquiries as to this mysterious assistant and found that I had to deal with one of the coolest and most daring criminals in London. He was doing something in the cellar something which took many hours a day for months on end. What could it be once more? I could think of nothing save that he was running a tunnel to some other building. So far I had got when we went to visit the scene of action. I surprised you by beating upon the pavement with my stick. I was ascertaining whether the cellar stretched out in front or behind. It was not in front. Then I rang the bell, as I hoped, and as I hoped, the assistant answered it. We have had some skirmishes, but we had never set eyes upon each other before. I hardly looked at his face. His knees were what I wished to see. You must have yourself remarked how worn, wrinkled, and stained they were. They spoke of those hours of burrowing. The only remaining point was what they were burrowing for. I walked around the corner, saw the City and Suburban Bank abutted on our friend's premises, and felt that I had solved the problem. When you drove home after the concert, I called upon Scotland Yard and upon the chairman of the bank directors with the results that you have seen. And how could you tell that they would make their attempt tonight? Well, when they closed their league offices, that was a sign that they cared no longer about Mr. Jabez Wilson's presence. In other words, that they had completed their tunnel. But it was essential that they should use it soon, as it might be discovered, or the bullion might be removed. Saturday would suit them better than any other day, as it would give them 2 days for their escape. For all these reasons, I expected them to come tonight. You reasoned it out beautifully, I exclaimed in unfeigned admiration. It is so long a chain, and yet every link reigns true. It saved me from ennui, he answered, yawning. Alas, I already feel it closing in upon me. My life is spent in one long effort to escape from the commonplaces of existence. These little problems help me to do so. And you are a benefactor of the race, said I. He shrugged his shoulders. Well, perhaps, after all, it is of some little use, he remarked. L'homme sans rien, l'œuvre c'est tout, as Gustave Flaubert wrote to George Sand. And that is the end of the Red-Headed League. I don't know if I pronounced that French right, I'm not gonna lie. Wait, let me try again. I'm gonna put that in Google Translate. Let's see. Translate. You sound like you're coughing for I'm trying.
L'homme c'est rien, l'œuvre c'est tout.
L'homme c'est rien, l'œuvre c'est tout. I hope that's right, wait.
L'homme c'est rien, l'œuvre c'est tout.
L'homme c'est rien, l'œuvre c'est tout. Which apparently means the man is nothing, the work is everything. Which honestly, I relate to more than I probably should. Imagine being made to copy down your entire textbook while your substitute teacher dug a hole in your own bedroom. Yeah, and a hole in your bedroom that connected to the local bank where they were gonna steal some French gold. French is a jank language, yeah. Very interesting. I thought, okay, maybe it's just me. I'm always expecting like a murder mystery or something, but burglaries and stuff like that. Interesting. Bravissimo, mademoiselle. Oh, merci. Very interesting story. Robberies are cool too, yeah. GTA 5 heist. Yeah, it does kind of feel like a heist. Which honestly makes me wonder, like, imagine if Sherlock was using his smarts for, like, evil. Imagine if he was using it to commit crimes instead of solve them. He would be, like, on one of those true crime TV shows of, like, unsolved cases, unsolved crime. Isn't that what Moriarty is? I guess so. But see, with every at least in the universe of Sherlock Holmes, with every genius evil comes a genius sleuth, and the stories are almost always resolved well. But imagine in real life, if he used it for evil, no one would be able to solve them. Sherlock, but like evil, and yeah, dark and twisted. In real life, you just get shot, true. But yeah, those were the 2 short stories that we are going to be reading from The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes today. I don't think we have to get through all of them. We'll return to Sherlock eventually. Next time I want to do poetry. Dark Sherlock would be a fun comic, yeah. They were nice stories and I hope you enjoyed them. Makes me want to curl up on my armchair and continue reading, not gonna lie. Ricky, you say adventure like Avengers. The Avenger. Clearly next time it's Nancy. Oh, I used to love the Nancy Drew comics. I love those. I wanted to be her so bad. Well, if we have fireplace. Oh, I forgot to do the ambiance. Oh, sacre bleu. I've forgotten the ambiance. What did Nancy draw? Peanuts. Ooh, crackling dog. Fun fact, Moriarty was based on a real criminal mastermind in London's high society named Adam Worth. What was he worth? Yeah, okay. I gotta remember the fireplace ambience next time, and also the cat purring. Do you think that would improve? Okay, wait. Let me try see what it sounds like. Fireplace ambience. Okay, and cat purring. Oh wait, there's one with a fireplace and the purr. Oh, bet. Oh, this is peak. Oh, this is peak. 2 for 1? Sign me up. Okay, I'm gonna put this on next time. This is Neanderthal. Maybe next time we'll even get the rain. We'll get the rain outside too. Those bangs, Laura. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming to tonight's stream. It was lovely getting to read for you guys again. I always like doing these streams, like, kind of like in the middle of a busy week, to settle down and relax. I think it's a good way for everyone, like not just me, to take a break. Yeah, I really enjoy doing this. Yeah, thank you for listening. You like a stream? Thank you, Nako Mama. Thank you. Alright, let's see. Who is live right now that I can redirect to? NASA is live. Memory is live. Oh, I don't really raid Memory often. Okay. Memory is learning English. She's on Duolingo. The owl. She's gonna get stalked by the owls. I'm gonna send you guys over to Memory. So make sure to guide her well. Teach her some elite English. Ego Jozu. Your ringing voice is relaxing when you're not saying ejaculation. Okay, but ejaculation, they meant like an exclamation, okay? It meant something different back in the day. Not to, yeah, keep her safe and say so, okay? Right. Anyways, I will see you guys later tonight for Limbus, which some people have been saying that it's been like it's supposedly pretty long. So I'll see how much I can get done. I'll see how much I can finish. And if it does take us more than one stream, then I will carry on to do it the day after instead of the railway update. Either way, we will be limbusing tonight and tomorrow night. Hime. Have a good day, Hime. Thank you for coming along. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Dong.